we go. Apologize for that. Working through some technical difficulties. We welcome everyone to another stream here of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We've been a little busy the last week and a half. Did a little tour of Europe. So I've been gone celebrating my 16th anniversary with my wife. We were gone for about 10 days. It was really good to spend some time in Europe, but man, it's great to be back in America. Hey, what's up, Toski? Appreciate, man. Appreciate the love. Hopefully, all is good with you, brother, and your family there in Aussie. Appreciate you tuning in for the comment. So, today's episode, well, we're going to spend some time as we have been gone and been out of pocket. We've had a lot of activity on YouTube. We really don't have the time. This is the night gig here, and we don't have all the time in the world to respond to everybody's comment on text. So one of the ideas that came out from some of the listeners and the viewers of the podcast is, you know what, we can use some of those comments to our benefit and have an episode where we're discussing and answering some of those comments that we aren't always able to get to. And even the ones that we're able to respond to, we're able to, discuss it here. Here's some additional comments. Hey, Kingpin, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Alani, thank you for referring Kingpin over, man. We appreciate all the different followers. We appreciate all the support and all those who appreciate the content. It takes time and energy to put this up, and hearing your guys' support and willingness to share with everyone around you it makes a big difference. A lot of sharing on and subscribing. Believe it or not, it goes a long way for our efforts here. So appreciate that. Thank you, Kingpin. And Alani for sending you over. As I mentioned earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to take the time here on this episode. We're going to walk through some of the comments that we're getting on social media, use that as a leverage here to kind of have some topics to walk through. This also is a great opportunity for the listeners. Once again, you have any questions, comments, throw them in the chat. We've had some great feedback, some great ideas come from the listeners and the viewers. If you have a video or a topic you want to bring up, we can kind of walk through as well. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll walk through it. We'll start with some of our, maybe we'll go back and forth. I think what we'll do, because a lot of our activity is on YouTube and also on TikTok. So we'll start off with kind of looking at some of the comments that we get on those two platforms before we dive into any of the other ones. And once again, feel free to show in anything that you guys want to discuss or kind of walk through as we go through here. We'll probably be, we typically run some of these shows at about an hour or so. We've had it go 3 hours, really just dependent on how many questions we get from the viewers and then how we progress through the topics. There's a couple things that I wanted to kind of touch base on. We get a lot of activity from our Samoan brothers and sisters. We don't know if they're brothers and sisters. It seems to be the same handful of comments and accounts that give the multiple questions, kind of consistently beating on the door. I'm kind of shocked that they're willing to spend that much time and energy. We've sent out invitation to some of these quote unquote, we'll call them viewers and listeners, because they are super active on our social media and giving comments. And we appreciate that, because that does give us a lot of more exposure. But we've really kind of sent out the invitation for them to come and join us on, their thoughts, their position. There is a big, question mark. There is those who discuss the Tu'imanua Empire and how much of influence that had in Polynesia, and obviously our position that the Tu'imanua Empire really doesn't seem to have a lot of robust evidence behind it. Hey, what's up, Edwin? Good to see you, brother. Appreciate the love there. Thank you for the comment. Hopefully everything's well with you and your family. So we'll start with some of the comments here. This is really a thread of comments had back and forth And when the question here is by Lauli is, and hopefully this is, I know one Lauli, and maybe that's the one I know from Hawaii. But he says, can you please answer my question on why Manua is sacred to Tongans and never ruled by Tuitonga? Now, that's something that I think is really important to kind of address here, is the idea that the Tuitonga did not rule over the Tuimanua, I think, is a false premise. And it's primarily because just because the Tuitonga did not go and enforce his military, political, and even religious power over the Tuimanua doesn't mean that he didn't rule over the Tuimanua. The Tuitonga at its highest could have exercised that power on Tuimanua, but didn't do so because why? Our famous phrase here. Because why? Because they were family and relatively close family. The Tuitonga recognized that the Tuimanua also is a descendant of Tangaloa, and though Aho'eitu became the heir, and for all intents and purposes, that is why Tangaloa Eitu Matupua created the Tuitonga title, was really to replace Tangaloa. And that's why the Tangaloa title, for all intents and purposes, did not move forward. That doesn't mean that there aren't people throughout Polynesia, not just Samoa, that have the name Tangaloa and are descended from Tangaloa. And so that's something that I think is really important in responding to that question is, yes, the Tuitonga did have power and did rule over the Tuimanua, but did not exercise that power out of respect. You know, it's the same thing if you have an aunt or uncle or some close relative that you could technically have political, military influence over, but out of respect to that family member, you don't go and exercise that type of power. But that doesn't mean you couldn't if you really, really wanted to. We'll jump over to a YouTube comment here. We'll kind of go back and forth and in the comments. And once again, for all the viewers and the listeners here, if you have a question or a comment regarding what we're discussing, shoot it in the chat. I'll bring it up so everybody can see it, and we'll talk through some of those. We'll come down here to a YouTube comment, and I'm just going, well, you know what? Let me scroll up. Like I said, I mean, I'll just example here. These are just comments that came in the last few days. We really won't have all the time in the world to answer each and every one of them. We try to do so from the very beginning, but it's just not feasible. So we're going to use our time here and have episodes to kind of talk this through, also give the opportunity for all the viewers to respond. And once again, if you're someone that has some of these questions or concerns, put them in the chat. Also, man, would love to send you a link to jump on. If you're available right now to jump on and have some discussion on your position, shoot me a text, man. Shoot me a message, and we could probably work something out. All right. I appreciate this one from Fobster7823. This is in response to Dr. Opeti Tariai's, just, poking some fun. That's saying a lot of doctor, especially because we have very different views on what exactly the origin of Tonga in relation to Tangaloa and also to Samoa. All right, Kingpin. Hey man, if we don't get to it soon enough, but you had a comment you want to kind of put in the chat there, Kingpin, go ahead and shoot him in there into the chat and we'll bring it up. If there was a specific topic you wanted to walk through, I'm just going from the most recent comment and just working my way backwards. So if any of the viewers or the listeners want to jump ahead to a specific comment that you had, feel free to shoot it here in the comments and we'll bring it up. So, Malo, Kingpin. This one was actually a very interesting question, and this was by Toria. And first, it starts off with the question, my DNA shows Tongan and Hawaiian. I'm Samoan, so now I believe we were all close, and they travel very far distances. Actually, at first, I was thinking my Tongan DNA was when Tonga ruled over Samoa. So, there's two things I really want to discuss through this before we jump into that. Have a couple comments here we'll add. Hey, Fifi Taniwa, appreciate it. Appreciate the love and the support. Hoping we're gonna work hard. I had a meeting today with Tevita Fale, my father, and we're working through some really cool episodes that he's going to bring up. Uh, he was saying one of the things that our next episode, and we'll probably have Devita Fale on live as well. There's been a lot of requests to have Q&As with him, so we're going to continue to make him more available for some of those Q&As. And then also, I think the next episode is going to be, we're going to walk through Devita Fale's Tuitonga lines, and go through the names and really highlight some of the specific Tuitongas that were um, tied to specific events that had big impact on the Tongan Empire overall. And so, yeah, we're going to continue to add that in there. Yep, 100% Kingpin. Shoot that over. We'll definitely add that into the mix. Clyde Moore here on X. Once again, man, appreciate the tune in. Hopefully all is well in your neck of the woods, Togo. So, I mean, coming back to this, Toria has a really good point here. And this is something that at the end of the day, I think we're gonna find if all the Polynesians did their DNA, because these DNA maps, basically what they're doing is when they find common threads or groupings of common threads of DNA in geographic locations, they start populating that and grouping that. So that's when you do your DNA, it's not shocking, Toria, that you would find your DNA from Hawaiian, Tongan, Samoan. As we mentioned, Tuitongas were marrying Hawaiians, Tahitians, and a bunch of those different and far and distant islands throughout the Polynesian Empire. Because really, when we say the Polynesian Empire, it was all one country. And our ancestors were traveling back and forth thousands of miles, marrying, exchanging goods and gifts, sharing technology, sharing new discoveries throughout the empire, and sharing new knowledge. So I think this is something that's really important. With this comment here from Toria, is really at the end of the day, I know our Samoan brothers and sisters are kind of beating on the podcast because our push to show that Tonga was the capital and the center of the Polynesian Empire. I understand that can be misunderstood as somehow trying to elevate Tonga beyond what they think it should be, but I think it's really important. In order for us to be unified as Polynesians, we have to be starting from a common starting point, and we have to understand where the center and where the focus of our people's technology, culture, religious and social structure came from. Because when we understand the starting point, then we can start building the connections to all the islands in Polynesia. That really leads us to being one people that had one government. We had one type of origin that we share universally amongst all of us. But at the end of the day, we can't get around every empire had a capital, every civilization had an origin, and really it's hard to be unified when we can't get some type of agreement across all of our Polynesian brothers and sisters as to where the center and the origin of our civilization came from. So that's a really big reason why we feel that it's important to come into alignment on the Tuitonga Empire in Tangaloa and the Polynesian Empire being centered in Tonga, and specifically Tongatapu. All right, we'll jump back here to TikTok. Same comment here. It's like I said, there are some individuals that are super active. We'll kind of go into some other comments here. Get them down here. Okay, can you please explain more of why you think it's possible for Tu'imanua is only a Micronesian empire, an empire outside of Polynesia? And this is really because a lot of people, when I ask them what are the primary references throughout Polynesia, that the Tu'imanua was some kind of, empire builder, a lot of people push me to look at, comments from people in Micronesia. And hey, I was trying to be kind of funny in that comment. We'll be like, hey, maybe the Tui Manua was the center of an empire in Micronesia, but really don't have a lot of evidence for it being in Polynesia itself. Yeah, and this is a comment from David Totai. Didn't Captain Cook? He clarifies later that's who he's referring to. He's seen other Polynesian islands visiting the Tuitonga, but I've never heard that. And that's a good point, Dave. That's the kind of things that whenever we're having these conversations about the Tuimanua, they all, and then we try to put the position of the Tuitonga seems to be the center of the empire. There is strong oral history that Tangaloa also lived on Tonga Tapu, and that the creation of the Tuitonga was to replace uh, the Tangaloa title and to carry that mantle, and that's where that transition happens. And when they say where's the evidence, and we point to such things like that, like the polo polo that you're mentioning, and it actually happens twice a year, because Captain Cook actually saw the Inasi. The Inasi was brought over to Tonga, and at that time it was primarily either taken care of by the Tui Hatakalaua or the Tui Kanukupolu, and that was kind of more of a annual tax slash trading. And I learned this from having a conversation with Daniel Fale, that really the Inasi was kind of a gathering once a year where everyone who were, if you were a specialist in, a certain type of crop, you brought that to Tonga. If you were a specialist in some type of carving, you brought that to Tonga. If you were a specialist in some type of weaving, all of that was brought to Tonga. And then it was the Tui Ha'atakalaua or the Tui Kanukupolu who would then kind of divvy up it was like kind of like a tax, but also an opportunity for everybody to come together and to divvy up all these different goods and technologies throughout the Polynesian Empire, right? So if you brought a certain crop, but you had a high interest in mats, that would be the exchange. You would bring that, you'd give this new type of crop or new type of whatever to whoever brought mats, and then the mats were given to another person. That was really directed by the Tui Ha'atakalaua or the Tui Kanukupolu, when they were instructed to lead on those things. But then the Polo Polo was specifically for the Tuitonga, and that was a religious offering to the Tuitonga. And this is one of the other things too, and I know it's kind of controversial, David, and to some of those who are adding some of these comments, is we have made the comment on our podcast that we're taking the position that Hikuleo, number one, is the only god that is mentioned in our oral history from the origin of the Polynesian and the Tuitonga Empire. That Hikuleo is the same God as the God of Israel. And the reason why I bring that up, and I know it's controversial, there's some people who are like, don't mix the one true God with the pagan gods, because we did have some other pagan gods at some point, because obviously rejected Hikuleo at some point, and other gods were brought into the mix. But the Polo Polo has a very similar kind of idea as the sacrificing of the first fruits and the first, livestock in a religious offering. And that is the main idea behind the Polo Polo, is the first fruits and are to be offered to the Tuitonga, who was also representative of a god, or sacrificing to a priest, quote unquote priest slash kind of religious figure. And so that seems to have some relative, at least from my perspective. And there's many other things from very early missionaries who came to Tonga who observed that Tongans exercised many cultural aspects that were very similar to ancient Israel. And so that's why we take that position. And some people think that's controversial. That's fine. We don't expect everyone. We're not here to convince everyone. We're here to express our ideas and our thoughts, and welcome anyone else to share their thoughts as well. Hey, appreciate the support there, Fifita Niwa. So we'll scroll back here to TikTok, and let's see if we can find someone else besides Lauli who is extremely active. Like I said, there's a handful of people who just kind of eat up all the bandwidth here. Um, here's another. This is kind of representative of a lot of interesting ideas, and I guess it's supposed to be taken as, Tonga was never colonized by a government, but they were colonized by religion. That's another position and comment thread that we see quite a bit on our social media. There's two ways I want to kind of address that. Number one, even if I were to concede that that were an acceptable explanation, which one would you prefer? Being beaten down and thrown down and having all certain types of behaviors and beliefs shoved down your throat, or being able to pick and choose what parts of your culture to exchange for a new type of way of thinking. Me personally, I'd rather take the latter. When you're colonized, for all intents and purposes, you are dictated to, because when you're colonized, that means there's a military presence, there is a political presence that you are subjected to, right? You don't have any voting rights to change certain things. You are subjected to whatever your colonizer will dictate to you. Now, in Tonga's case, with the position that, hey, you were colonized by religion, okay, even if I were to concede that, but at the end of the day, Tongans chose through their own exercises on what they would kind of employ and give up internally. So to me, if I were to choose one or the other, I would choose the latter. And I think Tonga has been able to maintain their independence. They were able to concede certain things out of their religious beliefs, but at the same time, I'd it'd be better to make those choices yourselves rather than being forced at it. Here's a comment here. Clyde Moore, I think in regards to mixing of gods, I think it's important to leave ideas afloat until I agree 100%. We don't know, but we're just kind of observing and say, hey, it seems to have that kind of pattern show up. I can't say for sure. I wasn't back there when Maui and Tangaloa were bringing people to Polynesia and know for sure. And so we're just talking about those things. Here's a comment here from Sativa Isamoa, the father of the Pacific, and then he also added he's tuning in from YouTube. We're talking about the beginning of Pacific history. Yes, we are talking about the beginning, and from our perspective, Tangaloa, Maui, and then also the Taula were inspired by Hikuleo, and his voice brought them across the Pacific Ocean to Tonga. And so that was how the Polynesian civilization, and when I say civilization, we're talking about the core ideas that formed the expansion of a civilization. I'm open to the idea that there may have been already other people living on the islands throughout Polynesia, but it is these founding fathers, is what I like to call them, Tangaloa, Maui, and the Taula, who were brought to Tongatapu. Well, first to Ata, then to Tongatapu. And they established the technology, the government structure, the religious structure that was the foundation of building the Polynesian Empire, which spanned thousands and thousands of miles. I want to repeat this. I appreciate that. I agree 100% with Clyde Moore here. Welcome, everybody. We want to have a discussion here. We're not saying that our position is always 100% accurate, but we want to have discussions here and having an opportunity to share ideas and come to a proper understanding of what we were able to what our ancestors were able to accomplish, which by all intents and purposes is remarkable. From Fred Haymuli here, Tupoluraki was not forced to be Christian. After his own testing and proving of his own free will, chose Christ. Not Yes, and that's when there's certain leaders, obviously they're going to influence others to join, but at the end of the day, that was one of the biggest things. I mean, one of the greatest things that, from my perspective, is these are kind of like those miracles. I don't think it was by chance that Tupo the First was born the same time that Laufiri Tonga, the last Tu'i Tonga, was born, and then also in that same year, Christianity makes first contact with Tonga. I believe God works in mysterious ways, and you can see His hand being revealed, and that's one of many reasons. And how Tupo the First behaved, and the remarkable things he was able to set up, and to see and to accomplish, and then for Laufiri Tonga to kind of have the same vision as well, and to really contribute to establishing Tupo the First as the region for Tonga, to lead Tonga into the next phase. And really, the way I see it is this: the same transition that Tangaloa had with Aho'eitu, the first Tu'i Tonga, in the transition of power and restructuring of the Tangaloa reign to the Tu'i Tonga reign. Something happened, and there was a need to restructure the empire, which led to the Tu'i Tonga inheriting from Tangaloa a new structure and a new governmental way of moving forward. That seems to be the same thing that happened with the Tu'i Tonga and Tupo the First and the Tu'i Kanukupolo. It seems that the Tu'i Tonga saw the shift and recognized that the old way of running and the old way of existing as an independent nation of Tonga was not feasible in moving forward. And that's why they really, at the end of the day, set up Tupo the First to be successful. Laufiri Tonga did, because the Tuikana Kupolo doesn't have a Taumafakava, they have a Ilokava, but Laufiri Tonga set up a cultural structure that not only legitimized Tupo the First, but allowed Tonga as a country to move forward to maintain independence. And I think there's a reason for that. Here's some more comments. Our comment section, I appreciate it. We're having comments from the viewers popping up here. We're going to go through as many of them as we can. Maui has a lot of history in Samoa, much before the Tu'i titles, and that's actually something that came up multiple times, and I don't see it here. Sativa Malosi, that was something that was brought up in some of the comments here. Is this title of Tu'i? Some people seem to be tied up with that and think that Tu'i means like that just automatically meant that you were a king and influenced large amounts of power and influence. Even within Tonga, the Tu'i Ha'apai and the Tu'i Vava'u, these were self-declared. I mean, really, as far as I can see, the Tu'i title doesn't always just mean that you're some heavily influential being. What it means is you had some political and maybe military power, but not necessarily the cultural and the historical influence that a Tu'i Tonga, and I will even say to the Tu'i Manua to an extent, because the Tu'i Manua is a descendant of Tangaloa and it seems to have some influence. But I really don't get hung up on the Tu'i title too much myself. Another comment here: might be helpful to compile a short video for other Polynesian cultures to help them understand the spirit of the discussions of your channel. Not the challenge, but to state certain facts and ponder different. 100%. That's a great idea, Clyde Moore. That's something we can definitely look into, because really, at the end of the day, we don't want to get too bogged down with that debate, because at some point we have to graduate and move beyond this, what seems to be, what can be easily perceived as a combative type of discussion, and really just establishing a forum for discussions to happen. So 100% agree with that. That's, maybe we could chop up some of the video and commentary here and spread that on all the different social media channels that we have. So good point, Dad. I appreciate that, Clyde Moore. All right, let's pop back here. I appreciate all the questions coming in from the live viewers. Um, we'll see. Here's another. From the original fatherland, which isn't in the terrestrial realm, they came through a passage and from the celestial realm and home of the gods. The fatherland is known by many names, Havaiki. And this is a good. I mean, I agree with this comment here by Tupuna Legacies. Havaiki is in reference to Vaihi. Savai'i is in reference to Vaihi. Vaihi is where Tangaloa and Maui come from. And you'll find, Havaiki, Savai'i, even in Tonga, several areas named Vaihi, and also throughout Polynesia. You will find the reference to the name Vaihi found throughout Polynesia because that is in remembrance of Vaihi, the faraway land that our ancestors came from. And this is one of the reasons why it's hard to accept that Samoa was the origin or even anything within the Polynesian realm, even though it's thousands of miles apart. Vaihi was the far away land, meaning it was further than Hawaii, it was further than Easter Island. So when we come to this idea that Samoa was, or even Tahiti, I also had some people talk that Tahiti is the motherland. They're and referencing certain things. This is why we have to have these discussions and come to an understanding, because how can we move forward and really reconstruct the past of our people without being able to come to an agreement on where Vaihi and where our origins from. So that's a really important topic for us to be aligned on. Hey, Zoe, appreciate that. We're here to get knowledge as well. We've learned a lot. We've had some guests join us here, and we were able to learn a lot from them as well. So once again, this is a international Kava circle, digital Kava circle, Kava discussion, because that is the social means by which our ancestors exchanged knowledge, just this exchanged information was through the Kava ceremony, and we're just taking it to a digital form here. So I appreciate that, Zoe. Hey, Missy, Malo Toko, I appreciate you joining in. Feel free to add any questions or comments. Appreciate the support. We'll jump back here to YouTube, and we're just going to jump back and forth, going through some of the questions and the comments here. So in Samoa, this is from Alo Fatashi 1. In Samoa, Maui is the son of Hui. Hui is the granddaughter of Alo Alo Olelela, rays of the sun. Alo, the half god. Alo is the son of Mga Mai Fatua, and Tangaloa, La, the sun god. Tangaloa La is the god king Amen Ra of ancient Egypt, Kemet Egypt, also Marduk of Sumer. Tangaloa is the son of Tangaloa, the sea god known as in Kemet Egypt as Pa, also known as Ea Enki in Sumer. Tangaloa is the father of humanity and the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Tangata man. Now, here's what I do have to say about this. I am not against these references to Egypt for a couple of reasons. The astronomical knowledge that is found on Tongatapu, at the Ha'amonga, and some of the etchings on the top of the Ha'amonga. I was able to be at Stonehenge in England this week. This week I was there. And that's the same astronomical knowledge that's also found in Egypt, that's also found in the Americas, and that's also found in Polynesia. So I can definitely be open to the idea that there are correlations between what we know and some of the references that we have to Egypt. And there are also heavy influences of Judaism on Egyptian mythology. Just like Horus is the son of the father god who dies and resurrects, there's a lot of similarities there. And so that's something that I'm definitely open to this it looks like a Samoan brother here. So Alofatasi 100% am open to that. That's definitely um, some correlations there. And as we mentioned here, nothing is like a smoking gun, 100% for sure. But we're definitely open to have those discussions. Hey, Missy Tonga, once again, appreciate it, man. Malo abito. Ovato. Let's see. Um, this is this is an interesting position. I don't have a lot of knowledge on this. I definitely am not necessarily in agreement on the serpent situation. But like I said, from our perspective, Tangaloa was a man, not a god. Hikuleo was the god, and Tangaloa and Maui were human beings just like us from our perspective. I've heard a lot of this online, even on Joe Rogan's podcast. There's definitely some discussion there. Looks like Clyde Moore. Appreciate the comments, man, and being active here. Let's jump back to TikTok. Your ancestors were led to, this is from Tupuna Legacies again. Your ancestors were led where they settled. Same goes for our Tupuna here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. They brought the Maoriora of the race to the, no arguments for me there. Tupuna Legacies. The our primary agreement there is that our ancestors were led by a god to Polynesia, and that these ancestors had access to knowledge and technology that allowed them to establish an empire throughout Polynesia and to travel, thousands of miles and establish basically a country for thousands of years that covered, millions of square miles. That if that country were still active today, would be the largest country in the world. Granted, majority it would be surface water, but still, that's impressive and something that all Polynesians can be proud of. So I don't think there's any issues there. There's another comment here. I don't see the logic of building ruins in a place/village where they claim is Maui's birthplace and where his parents still resided while he Tia Atalanga throughout the Moana Lua. Moana Loa, I'm assuming that's throughout the Pacific. The primary reason behind that is because the importance of buildings and ruins is that is an evidence of a sophisticated and structured empire. And that's really the value of it. That's why we definitely recognize the Romans, the Greeks, all the ancient empires throughout the world. The Egyptians, one of the biggest manifestations of their sophistication and their organization as an empire are their ruins. And that's why, we leverage, wouldn't say lean, we leverage the fact that there are ruins throughout Tongatapu, and even Tongan ruins throughout Polynesia, that even to this day, many islands throughout Polynesia are referenced as the Tongans built those, and even those that people don't know that the Tongans built. And when we say Tongans, we're saying the Polynesians. We're just saying that the centers of power were in Tonga, but that the Tongans highly influenced the building of certain structures throughout Polynesia. Hey, Franco, appreciate the comment there. Ha'amonga, Maui, and other stone mounds in Tonga are evidence of the connection with Tonga and Waihi. Tangaloa and Maui came from Waihi, which is the opposite seasons. Ha'amonga, Maui helped. And this is actually a really important point that I think Franco is making there, is 100% alignment there, Franco. And the significance of the Ha'amonga shape, and even that of, one could say, of the stargates around the world that are found in Egypt, found in the Americas, and also found Stonehenge, is and let me see if I can pull this up. I'm gonna log into the back end of De Vita Fale's website here to try and pull up one of his star maps, because this is really important. The reason why the Ha'amonga was built the way it was built, it is, and this is another thing that shows sophistication. Um, the the kava ceremony, especially the Furitaunga for the Tuitonga, and the Tamafakava for the Tuikanukupolo, are representations of the constellations in the sky. Which, I don't know about you guys, but it's pretty cool that we have kava ceremonies that are built and structured on where people sit, and where, the kava is mixed, are representations of constellations in the sky. And this is also true of, um sorry, I'm trying to work on logging in here on the back end so we can find. Let me share this. We're going to look at, I want to find one of De Vita Fale's star maps that show the exact constellation. Actually, okay. I'm going to have to download it so we can zoom in on it a little bit better. I'm going to save that, but then I'm also going to look to see if I can find a better one. Basically, the Ha'amonga is the critical constellation in the sky that allowed our ancestors to navigate the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Okay, and that's what really makes our ancestors unique. We had the Vikings, we had certain people in the northern hemisphere who could travel all throughout the northern hemisphere, because why? They had the North Star, so they could always tell their direction, right? Based off of the North Star, so they could, okay, well, this is north, this is east, this is west, this is south. What made our ancestors unique is whether we were in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, our ancestors could navigate both hemispheres and understand during the day and also at night where the directions were. So I am going to, let me see, this might be the right. Okay, yes. Let me download this. Let me know if there's any other questions. I'm just going to download this so we can zoom in on it and give you guys, the viewers here, a better experience on what exactly I'm referring to. All right. I'm going to window this guy right here. All right. Okay. I'm going to zoom in here. And this is what, a lot of people who kind of question De Vita Fale and the origins and where he gets his information from, because he doesn't have a PhD, didn't do the blah blah blah. The guy has spent over, and it's longer than it, but over 40 years of anywhere between 40 to 80 hours a week working on this stuff, tracking the stars, verifying it, going to the ruin locations, doing all the names. But anyways, what I'm getting to is here. You see how you have the two hemispheres, right? The Ha'amonga, or it's part of Orion's belt, is the key for crossing the two hemispheres. This is why the Ha'amonga is built the way it's built. This is the Ha'amonga right there. So it is a critical piece of being able to transition from the northern to the southern hemisphere and from the southern hemisphere into the northern hemisphere. And so that is why it is such a big deal. This is why you find this information throughout the world, in sophisticated civilizations, whether it was the Inca, the Maya, whether it was the Egyptians. I mean, you name a sophisticated, and when I say sophisticated, I'm kind of leaning more towards astronomical knowledge. Obviously you have certain civilizations like the Romans and so forth that were more like land and military based civilizations, but those that were kind of able to transcend that into kind of an astronomical and spiritual sense, that is a different level of sophistication in my mind. But this is what I wanted you guys to just kind of take a look at. And so this line right here represents um Maui's road. This is the Milky Way and the pattern it has on both hemispheres. And so when you have that, that's Maui's road. That's the road by which you navigate the earth at night. Um, and then what you would have is the equator, right? Which would cut the earth in half. That is the movement of the sun. That's this area right here. That would cut the earth into northern, or sorry, I zoomed in on the wrong one. Right here. Let me zoom in on that. So not only does you're able to go through the northern and southern hemisphere, because as we mentioned earlier, the Milky Way is Maui's road, which is the means by which you navigate at night. But then the road for Tangaloa is the equator. This is why, and if you guys noticed on a lot of the references to Tangaloa is the use of the sun, because the king or the political power is typically represented by the sun. And so Tangaloa's road would have been the equator, because that is the rising and setting of the sun and the patterns of the sun. And this whole discussion is to come back to Franco's comment here. The Ha'amonga Maui and the other stone mounds in Tonga are evidence of connection Tonga with Waihi. Waihi is the motherland. Tangaloa and Maui came from Waihi, which had opposite seasons. Ha'amonga Maui helped them measure. Yes. And this is where it all comes together. So not only is there the astronomical Ha'amonga Maui that is critical for navigation, finding direction in the northern or the hemisphere, regardless of where you are, but the Ha'amonga Maui also helped them track the seasons. And so they knew when the best seasons were to go and make the travels to avoid the weather, bad weather. And like Franco's mentioning here, what are the best times to go to Waihi? What are the best times to go to Easter Island? What are the seasons, the best time to go to Hawaii? And so that had a big impact on the decisions on when to travel, and also what are the best times to plant certain crops based off of the seasons. So, yeah, we have a comment here from Muku. I've never asked him directly on the flat earth theory. He's never mentioned that. But that's definitely something we can ask him and see what his position is on that. Debbie, appreciate it. Thank you for the support. Mahalo. Clyde, more ideas and theories are like boats. In Waka, it doesn't matter how good it sounds for it to succeed. It must be able to sail open waters. Ideas must be proven true outside of one's bias. Like the Vita Fala star map here, it applies outside of our bias. And that's really one of the biggest things, Clyde Moore, that academics don't have on Te Vita Fale is academics, for the most part, are really just relying on what has been written and provided previous to them, and a lot of times that's by Western ideas and by Western accepted thoughts, and that limits their ability to really grasp the true capacity of our ancestors and what they did. And then the time he's taken to really validate this, as I mentioned, one of the our last programs with David Tafale is he spent a year mapping the movement of the stars in Hawaii to validate some of these ideas. And so as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, if you were to try and measure his knowledge in degrees and PhDs, he's probably got at least 4 PhDs in regards to the amount of time and energy that has been spent on the work that has been achieved by him. In many ways, unfortunately, that's true, because a lot of it is based off of just leveraging other ideas on other boats that are not have not left the harbor either. Hard, I'm kind of in alignment with you, Clyde Moore. Any of the viewers out there that think that there's too much bias on our thoughts on that, shoot it in the chat. Give us some thoughts. Like I said, I'll pull it up and let everybody kind of think and then digest and ponder on it. This is as we mentioned, the digital Kava Bowl. Here's Increase, another very active individual here on our where is the evidence that Tuitonga ruled over the Tuimanua. It's a really just that's a very simple exercise. Increase, if the Tuitonga really wanted to go over the Tuimanua and make him bow down, it would have happened. The Tuimanua, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something, had a very difficult time even just maintaining Samoa itself, let alone a vast empire. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the Tuitonga recognized that the Tuimanua also descended from Tangaloa, and it was out of respect for that familial relationship that led to that. So that's kind of my position on that. Increase. All right. So once again, this is I'll zoom out one more time, and really this is something that we'll probably work on as we develop more work. And this is David Tafale's Maui star map that he's developed, and hopefully we'll get to a point that we can digitize it and make this more available in a kind of a more digital and more portable setup. And this is one of many star maps that David Tafale has developed. All right, we'll come back, see where we are. Share. All right. Once again, like I said, this is another similar thread or comment. Tonga was colonized. They have a king and adopted a lot of customs and culture from the British. Also, Christianity is a form of colonization. You can say that, as far as I'm concerned, that's a return of Hikuleo and a lot of the beliefs that the ancient Tongans, and I would say ancient Polynesians in general, already have. One key example of that, I just kind of skimmed through on the flights throughout Europe when I went to Europe and coming back, skimmed through George Vason's book. And, a big thing that George Vason was shocked was how, and this is for Polynesians, and I want to clarify this when I say Tonga, in many ways, I'm referencing all of Polynesians, but he was speaking with a commoner in Tonga about a individual who had died, but the Tongan was speaking to him as he was still alive. And of course, George Vason being a Christian, or at least was a Christian at the time, I think he kind of gave up Christianity to enjoy the local lifestyle in Tonga for a few years. But the idea of the soul being enduring death seemed to be a prevalent idea amongst the local the inhabitants in Tonga, and that would probably be true throughout Polynesia. And so that is just one other evidence that, you know, the Lotumua and the Lotumui had a lot more in common. You know, obviously, in between the original ancient religion and the new religion of Christianity, a lot had changed in between the gaps of when those two were first established in Polynesia, where a lot of different ideas come in and kind of, you know, what's the word? Negatively impact the original religion. But yeah, that's kind of our position there. Let me see here. Like I said, there are some people here. Oh, this I think this is a brother from Fiji. Um, Increase Malo. Can't help you if you had struggled to see what I'm trying to get to. Um, Once again, if we are to take that position, you know, it is what it is. I don't see any evidence that the Tui Manua was the head of an empire either. But it was very clear that the Tongans had a very large navy and had the capacity to do what they were able to do. All right. Last comment here, and then we'll go back to YouTube. Let's see. We'll start from the bottom here. Well, there's a lot more. In Tongan history, there was a Fijian who was king in Tonga. Don't believe me? Ask. I'll ask that question. This is from Ratu Vaka Nile Bakula. That would be a surprise to me. I mean, I would be open if they were half Fijian, maybe a mother from Fiji, but the Tui Tonga was primarily, as far as I can see, and I've never heard otherwise, Tui Tonga was always a male who had a mother from potentially another island, but the father was always Tongan, and Tui Tonga, and that it went from father to son to father to son. Our land mass is much bigger, so we have chiefdoms to look after our territory. This was towards a comment that I kind of made, that I wasn't aware of Fiji ever being unified under a single power. But I mean, I agree there were chiefdoms, but I'm not aware of a unifying single power in Fiji. Then there's is, but when all these chiefs come together, they know the people who knows who's who till this day. Understood, people can know who's who, but a unified legislative or some type of organized government, um, knowing who's who can also be just based off of who has military power and not necessarily under a uniform religious, social, or political structure that is a cohesive one that creates a nation. And if Fiji did not exist, how come there was a Fijian, was the king of Tonga? Like I said, I mean, the nation of Fiji never existed. So when you say, you know, if Fiji did not exist, there are Fijians, there are people that are Fijians that we reference today. But also, you know, the comment of the Fijian king of Tonga, not aware exactly what Ratu is referencing there. Oh yeah, wait, Malo Slick Rick. Yo. I mean, we're not trying to Slick Rick, right? I mean, we're not trying to, but at the end of the day, people like Increase Peace who are crying for evidence, and I'll use one of our co-hosts here analogies that I think is hilarious. I mean, I think it's funny, but I'm not trying to make people angry or anything. Is we have three cars, muscle cars. They look beautiful on the outside. You know, when you hear the comments about them, you know, the Tuitonga Empire, the Tuimanua Empire, and the what is it, the Tuipulotu Empire. You start with the Tuipulotu, which in my opinion is one of the weakest of them all. You open up the hood, and you're like, dang, there is almost absolutely nothing in there. You know, it's just a shell of a beautiful car. It sounds great. It looks great. But when you open the hood, not much going on there. Then when you go from there, you go to the Tuitonga Empire, you open that thing up, and it's like, got pistons all over the place, fuel injection, has an engine in there that you would expect for a muscle car. And you're like, okay, not necessarily saying it's the absolute smoking gun, but it's kind of believable this car might be able to move very quickly. And then you walk over to the Tuimanua Empire and you open up the hood and you see those little squirrels running in circles. And I can't deny that, well, there's something in there, right? I can't say there's absolutely nothing. But I also can be like, dude, if I were to make a comparison of these three cars, if they went into a race, which one would probably win? Well, man, I'm going to have to put my money on the Tuitonga one, right? Despite that they all look great from the outside and they sound great. But when push comes to shove, I'm putting my money on the Tuitonga. Okay. Now, did my DNA, I got Tongan, Samoan, and Fijian blood in me. So I love all of them. I appreciate all of them. But we're just trying to have a really honest conversation and just, have a discussion there. Increase peace. Love to have you on the podcast. We can sit down, have a conversation. We will just, you can put your position out there. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to debate it or anything. It's to put your position, express it so that people, as they say, put it on the record, have people listen to it, have their thoughts, and the listeners can make up their own minds. So, Yahweh. Okay. Once again, brother, peace. That is, the Inasi was from multiple areas, multiple islands. Even George Vason expressed that they were from outer islands as well. But all up to you, brother. It's all good. We're here. We're here when you're ready to embrace us. We're ready to embrace you once you're ready to embrace us, brother. Peace. But I would say at least there were people there bringing a Inasi. So another comment from Increased Peace. Malo. The good news is one day we'll find out, right? Ay, Yahweh. Malo, uso. Okay. So that's Ratu's comments there. See, and this is something that before we jump into there, Franco not being colonized isn't evident. Our old traditions aren't true. So what makes you think our old traditions? Yeah. That's to me, I don't, that to me is evidence of something, Franco. It's not by chance that Tonga didn't get colonized. And this is where I'm trying to express to a lot of our brothers and sisters in Polynesia. Tonga was able to survive because all the ideas, all the lessons learned, all the experiences of the Polynesian Empire was brought to the capital. Just like in Rome, all roads led to Rome. In Rome, you would find ideas, you would find the crops, you would find wealth, everything from throughout the empire was brought into Rome. That is also true about Polynesia. The reason why Tonga was able to survive was because it was in many ways the collection of all the ideas and all the experiences of our ancestors that consolidated to Tonga. And that is what allowed our ancestors to survive and not be colonized. I mean, here's an interesting thought. Polynesia may be the only region in the world that survived colonization. I mean, I think I'm kind of running through my head. When you think about every region of the world, at some point, those civilizations were colonized or lost power, except for the Polynesian civilization. And I think that means something. And that's what, that not being colonized is an evidence of. Um, so yeah, I think that's a fair point from my perspective there, Franco. Hey, we love all our brothers and sisters, even when they punch us in the face for what we believe, but we still love them. Yeah. Um, you do kind of see the irony in what you said, oral traditions, and then say show us. We can't show you oral, brother. We would have to speak it verbally, and you would have to hear it. So if you want us to show you stuff, we can show you the hamonga, we can show you the langis, we can show you a lot of things. Um, but for the oral traditions, we would have to speak it to you. Increase malo. All right. Tonga Mama or Tonga Tapu was established. Tangaloa Eiki's dwelling as Pulotu was Hikuleo, the oldest child dwelling place. It was later that Tangaloa's descendants traveled to Manua. I think if I understand that correctly, this person doesn't have a handle. But I think we were aligned there. That's the one thing that we I guess we should try and express a little bit more. We don't doubt the existence of the Tu'imanua. We don't doubt that it was a title of influence. What we're not necessarily convinced on is the idea that the Tu'imanua number one was the beginning of the civilization in the empire, and number two was a ruler in the empire. Our position is that the Tu'imanua was, there is a ancient practice that was done by Tangaloa and by the Tu'itonga called Tokatufa. And basically what it would be is the Tu'itonga and Tangaloa obviously would have multiple wives, and they would have a child with a woman from a far away, not foreign, a distant island within the empire, and then that would establish a familial tie to that woman's family, and that child would then become quote unquote a governor type presence, and having that familial tie back to the Tuitonga or back to Tangaloa, no different than how the Europeans established certain relationships for military and political purposes. Tangaloa and Tuitonga did the exact same thing, and established certain leaders in regions. An example of that um, exists is Tu'imanua. And that's something we would give, even though, and that's being generous from our perspective, because there is room to say that the Tu'itonga predates the Tu'imanua just by title holders. But if we were to accept that the Tu'imanua did descend from Tangaloa, that would be the position at which we could see, hey, there's a possibility there. All right, we'll jump back here to YouTube. Go through some additional comments there. This is by Family Active 4922. All Polynesian history is a gem, and to get it in all different perspectives, we can connect the dots, or better yet, connect the islands. 100%. And I can't really re-emphasize this, because I can understand how our position can be misinterpreted as overly pushing or elevating Tonga. I understand how that can be perceived that way, but really we've been trained, because the Polynesian Empire was divvied up due to colonization. We reference Tonga as a location, as quote unquote a country, Samoa, Tahiti, Hawaii, even though that's part of the United States. But the point is, our minds have been so conditioned to reference these areas by how Europeans divvied it up due to colonization. But in many ways, when I'm saying Tonga, in many ways, I'm referencing the Polynesian Empire, because at the end of the day, it was all the knowledge, all the experience of the empire as a whole throughout Polynesia that consolidated in Tonga, um, because Tonga, out of Tonga, it was established, but all the experience over time allowed Tonga to survive colonization. But really, that is an evidence of our people as a whole, um, and that shared experience overall is what allowed Tonga to survive colonization. I'm trying to express it in that manner because at the end of the day, I 100% agree with Family Active here. At the end of the day, we're trying to connect dots, we're having discussions, and we are one people. No doubt about it. No doubt about it in my mind. Appreciate James there for the fire there and the support. Another great episode. This is referencing the most recent episode with Devita Fale. Appreciate the hard work and years of dedication you put into Devita Fale. Knowledge is power, and that's especially true with our history. Please keep these episodes. They truly gold. 100% appreciate the support there, Siliva. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the live here, did meet with Devita Fale. He's working on multiple episodes that are coming up. A sneak peek or kind of a preview of the next episode with Devita Fale is he is compiling major key events throughout the Tuitonga line that he has compiled. And he's going to talk about the significant events that happened at specific Tuitongas that will kind of give more background and context. Because a really important thing that Devita Fale did that really separates his Tuitonga list from all the other lists that can be found out there is these Tuitonga names that he has identified is tied to settlements of the Tuitonga throughout Tongatapu. And I think let's come back here to let's see here. Okay. This one right here. So I'm going to share this. This is really what separates Devita Fale's um, Tuitonga list from all the others. Number one, it's longer. It has more references to Tuitongas there. And as Devita Fale did mention, that's the best that he could do based on the names and the oral history and the ruins and the langis that are tied to specific Tuitongas over time. There is a possibility he could be missing some, but based off of the 40 years of research and 40 years of tracking down names, oral history, and tying it to the specific locations and the settlements of the Tuitonga, that's where and how he built his Tuitonga list. And so that's based off of these are the six settlements. Obviously, first one here, Devita Fale says there's at least three Tuitongas that lived here. And this is was named Tonga when Aho'eitu, this is where Tangaloa resided. This is where Maui resided, these, squares with a red dot on the inside. Maui, this is where the Taula existed or resided. Then we also have the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then the last Tuitonga settlement that Devita Fale has developed. And that's where his list comes from. So it's not just, purely oral history. It's also tied to specific mounds at specific locations and historical events tied to where they happened and occurred on Tongatapu. All right, we'll come back here to YouTube. Let's see. Oh, hey, Kingpin. Looks like we did make it to one of your comments, Toggle. So, reason why most ancestors were living and stood their ground is because of that. Sorry for those who have lost it, but the strong survive. Now that I have heard more, it makes sense why it wasn't a royal family. Isn't putting any sense to this for those who don't believe and understand. Just saying because I only hear you two barking about this, and Alani from East Palo Alto in Northern California are spreading this out from my point of view. Much love. And that's really what we're out here trying to share, is sharing that history, and let the ideas compete. Tevita Fale is extremely confident in his ideas and his position, and he spent 40 plus years, over 100,000 hours overall, and that's on average. He's probably done well more than that. So let the ideas compete. We're out here to present our position, our thoughts, our ideas. We more than welcome anyone else's to the table. So Malo Kingpin. And I appreciate that, Alani Elmatic. I'm gonna 2.5 square mile. Okay, yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with that handle here, so I appreciate him sending you over. Oh, good old Increase Peace. As they say in the South, bless your heart, Increase. This is how the truth from, let's just expand that out. Fabricated over centuries to suit the bloodlines in the house to keep it pure Tongan when it wasn't, and yet not seeing historical evidence artifacts around the Pacific, Fiji, to see the connections. I'm not quite sure with Anomalie. I'm not quite too sure what to say about that comment there. This is us. David Tafale is looking to be in Auckland, I think, in about 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to see how that goes. Hey, Yahweh. Hey, Increase and Franco, be nice. Be nice in the comments. Yahweh, be nice. No, appreciate that, Glidemore. David Tafal has been mapping those settlements, like I mentioned, on his. Let me see if I can pull this up. Someone had mentioned, Zoe had mentioned any book recommendations. What I would recommend, Zoe, is I would start with David Tafale's website. He has a, let me zoom out here. It's like super zoomed in because I'm trying to give you guys a better view at some of this stuff. Sorry, it does have some of the back end information there, but I would go to Tevita H. Fale or thfale.com. That is Tevita Fale's website. He has a handful of articles going over a variety of different topics, talking about, topics such as Pulotu, Polynesia, Vaihi, Loau, the significance of the civilization there in Tonga. Kind of talk through those, also about the Kava ceremony. And then coming back to Clyde I don't know if you've had the chance, but if you go and visit Devita H. Fales, he did have a 6-part series, like right here. Actually, I think it was a 7-part series going over the different settlements, and he kind of talks about who he has that living in those settlements over that period of time. So check those out. Like I said, he has, I think it's a 7 or 8 article series kind of going over that, Clydemore. So that might be of help to you. Oh man, Peace. You come in and you are crying about not being uniting, but you're the one that's throwing out the most amount of animosity. So all good. Peace. We love you, man. We'll take you as you are. All right. Um, let's do. I think we got a couple more. We'll go through a couple more comments here, and I think we may call it good. Let's go to. Looks like we lost the screen share. We'll go back to TikTok here and look at some of the comments. Yeah, and this is an interesting comment here from we'll just say ASAP for now. To then, and I think this is in reference to it's very popular for those kind of pushing the yeah, Clyde Moore 100%. The YouTube chat right now is on fire. So oh, I got to bring that comment up for Clyde Moore is joining us from X, and as we mentioned earlier, we're streaming on 5 different platforms, and so right now YouTube is on fire. there's some there's some punching and then some counter punching going on back and forth, but you're not missing out on too much, Clyde Moore. Anything of important from YouTube, I'll bring up. Yeah, way. That's a good point, Missy. I mean, I think Increased Peace is a good name, a good hashtag, but he needs to adopt it a little bit more. Or she. Hopefully, I didn't step on your toes there, Increase. And honestly, Increase, love to have you on here. Feel free to join. We've given you this invitation several times. Come on. We're not going to yell at you. We'll give you the opportunity to present your position and let the ideas compete rather than having unnecessary words thrown at each other. But there has been those who've really referenced this Tupaya map that I guess I think he was it Tahitian maybe, who drew a map and pointed towards a center island called Savaii or Samoa. One could make the argument that they're referencing Vaihi. And obviously this individual probably didn't have a ton of astronomical knowledge, but had a general idea that there was an empire that existed. We're open to that, but really not 100% bought off on that idea that somehow proved it. And here's another interesting thing, and this is a comment that we do hear a lot from the Tuimanua position. They also say that Tonga means south, but south of what? I would really kind of zoom out of the idea at all. Well, it's south of Samoa. Well, there's a lot of islands south of whatever you want to say. I would say zoom out a little bit more to a wider, broader vision. You're just looking at a Samoa centric position. We would zoom out and say in the Polynesian Empire, this was the southern portion that was sacred, Tongatapu, and was the capital of the Polynesian Empire. And so kind of zoom out a little. There's also places called Rarotonga that are, kind of throws a different type of perspective on that. So yeah, Increase's boat hasn't even been built, let alone sitting in a harbor. His boat isn't. And it's hard for me not to really agree with you on that. I mean, I agree, Clyde Moore. I mean, I get pointed at when I ask for kind of the evidence of that position on the Tuimanua, and just kind of what's thrown at me is, kind of like a family tree type of position. But I just watched. I went and visited a bunch of cultural sites throughout England and Scotland, and went to a couple of William Wallace memorial sites. So I decided to watch Braveheart the first night I was in Scotland, and this comment here and the position that's shared by the Tu'imanua position is this reminds me of you know William Wallace makes the first big victory in the movie Braveheart, and then all the Scottish nobles come out and they're trying to court William Wallace because he has some military and social and capital and political capital that they're trying to leverage. Um, and then they start arguing about who should be king, and then they all come out with their little paper. It's like a family tree, right? That shows that they are the heir, and all they do is yell at each other like that's falsified, that's fake. That's what I feel like when I'm kind of thrown at me the legitimacy of the Tu'imanua position is like when all those Scottish noblemen are arguing about their family tree and how they have the legitimate rights to the kingship of Scotland. That's how I feel at the same way, and why I kind of agree with you that the boat really, maybe they're lucky if it's a boat. Yeah, it's maybe just a drawing, like you said. Maybe they're lucky it's a drawing. It's for sure in their mind. Maybe they haven't drawn it out, but really hard for me to really take it seriously when someone's crying for evidence, and then when I call for evidence, they throw at me a family tree. Fifita, all good, Uso. We're here trying to connect the dots. Come, and you're only distancing us with your comments and making others think this is a joke. 100% agree with that. Would we're really just trying to have a serious conversation, and we open arms always increase, but we got to have the ideas compete. At the end of the day, have the ideas compete. We're more than willing to share your ideas. As I mentioned, join us. We can run a live, we can run a recorded show. I'll have you pre-approve the video before it gets uploaded. Whatever you want, man. It's not a big deal. We can make it work. We can make it work. Increase. Another comment here from Clyde Moore. The thing for all of us U.S. policies in on this chat, we need to remember is that regardless of our race, we are a far reach from the men who we proudly claimed. 100%. And I think that's an important thing. And I think this is something that, I think us as Polynesians overall can bring to America and really around the world. But since the comment here is on the U.S. polys, this is something that we really bring to the table that this country is really suffering from, is really a sense of purpose, a sense of unity, a sense of, of pride on where one comes from, that really just, it helps all the people around us. And we can see it. We can see it in the culture here in America and really around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, even in England, met some people there who love Polynesians and what they bring through rugby culture over there. And I think what I'm trying to get to is this. There's a reason why I believe there is a reason why Polynesia is the only region in the history of the world and a civilization that has never been colonized, and the oldest. We have something to bring to the table to the whole world, and we're able to do that because of who we come, because of our ancestors and who we come from, and that's something that it seems like the world is gravitating towards, and we have a unique opportunity and responsibility to really maintain that, and not only share that with the next generation of Polynesians, but also with the world, because I can't help but see it, man. It seems like every 2 or 3 years there's like a huge breakthrough in what our people are accomplishing in sports, in entertainment, in politics. Maybe there's a reason why, you know, God had our neck of the woods, our part of the world, be discovered last. Is he has an expectation for us to bring something to the table. So oh yeah, we increase. Hey, we love you, man, or girl. Can you confirm whether you're we'll just call you increase peace, but not trying to disparage anything, Toko. But once again, would love to have you join the show. All right. Um Here's something that is also interesting. They pick and choose when to believe the royal family. When Tupou said the ancestors of the Tuitonga were from Samoa, they made up some excuse. Okay, I'm going to clarify this again. I feel like we addressed this, but we will address it as many times as we need. Tupou the first said our progenitors. Okay, as we mentioned, the Tuiha Takalawa, the Tui Kanukupolu, and the Tuitonga were always Tongan males, even if they married a Samoan or foreigner from another island, but they were Tongan males who inherit the title. When you have a mother and a father, your mother's line is also your progenitor, and your father's line is a progenitor. Okay. So that is the idea that we're expressing. Somehow, the fact that Tupou the first said our progenitors are from Samoa, they could be directly referring because that's the Tuikanukupolo line, and do have, you know, heritage coming from their mothers from Samoa. Then yes, that term is correct. But for somehow to take that and to define it as that's where not only the Tuikanukupolo, but to say all Tongans, like they said, oh, the Tuitonga, well, the Tuitonga married Samoans, Hawaiians, Tahitians, so they could say the exact same thing about all these other islands as well. And at the end of the day, that is to me, a more fair description, especially when you tie it to the fact that the Tuitongas were always Tongan males. There are thousands of years of history that establishes that, compared to a singular definition of progenitor means that's the origin of the Tongan civilization and Tuitonga Empire. Clyde Moore here for another comment. Tay, you know what's impressive? The mind of Xiaoxi, King Xiaoxi the First. Any good chess player would know that besides winning or losing, you still made a lot of times. Now, thinking of that, the wit he had to do what he did in the midst of the colonial, it really is. It is miraculous. And the only way I could see that even being feasible is if he was inspired, Clyde Moore, because statistically speaking, it Tonga should not have survived. That's He had to be inspired. There's just so many overwhelming challenges, and what he was able to accomplish in a short amount of time, and then also to have the right people at the right places. You know what? That's one of the things that are interesting too. Is there's a reason why the Shestonga Tawataina was established, right? Because the accusation that, Tonga was colonized through Christianity, it was because of the church being established in European positions, and that influence became overbearing and quite a negative, not from a religious perspective, but from a political perspective. No different than why England established the Anglican Church. Tonga established their own, Shestonga Tawataina. Then you had the the Shestonga Ho'eki, right? I mean, there's development development of multiple independent quote unquote churches. And so it really is miraculous in many ways what Tupo the First was able to accomplish in that point of being a chess player, establishing treaties, understanding, like you were mentioning here, Clyde Moore, understanding where the battle needed to be. Um, my opinion, he acted with thousands of years of knowledge bestowed upon him to rule over the. Yes, I think here's another interesting thing, right, Clyde Moore, and I didn't have this understanding and until our last episode with Devita Fale that I mean a lot of people know this. I didn't know this, but the Tuikanu Kupolu was not a father to son type of situation. Apparently, the Tuikanu Kupolu line was a voting system where they would vote in. This is how Tupo the First was able to insert himself as the Tuikanu Kupolu because Area Motua was the Tuikanu Kupolu. He came in to help because Area Motua had converted to Christianity and was being oppressed um, by the other chiefs or being opposed and chiefs in Tonga. So that gave Tupo the First the excuse to come and to join in with Alea Motua, and then also to eventually obtain all the votes needed to become the Tuikanu Kupolu. And obviously they're all related distantly, but Tupo the First grew up in Mua. He grew up with Laufiri Tonga. He grew up being exposed to all the knowledge of thousands of years of an empire. He grew up in the capital. And what makes it miraculous is he was actually born a very sickly kid, right? And so was taken to a bunch of different taulas to try and be saved. He was sent to the Tuitongas priest. And he was saved. That's how he got the name Taufa Ahau. He was cured by the quote unquote priest of the old religion. He lived in Mua, got the exposure to learn and understand how the empire functioned and worked. Then he goes to Ha'apai, establishes himself as a military, in many ways, a military genius, being successful in all the battles that he did. And yeah, really inherited a lot of that knowledge and information. Yeah. Everybody wants to be the boss, but nobody knows what it takes to be the boss for a day, let alone, yeah. And that's really what I'm coming back to in when we talk about the civilization, we're talking about a core set of ideas. These ideas span scientific, political, social, economic, and religious ideas that provide a stable enough environment for unified leadership over thousands of years, right? That's what makes it unique. Because, like you're mentioning, it's easy. I mean, I won't say easy. It's difficult enough just to win and gain control over something, but to maintain stability and structure over thousands of years and leadership over thousands of years, that's what makes, the existence of the Polynesian Empire to today. Granted, it's only through Tonga, but the Polynesian Empire, Tonga is the Polynesian Empire that exists today. That is impressive on its own. And I think that's something that all Polynesians should celebrate. This is a claim that's not just Tongan, but all Polynesians, because it is a manifestation of the Polynesian Empire's sophistication, stability, and really long-reaching principles of social, political, scientific, economic concepts that have led to stability even to this day, or existence to this day. All right. Well, guys, I think we covered good enough ground today. We covered a handful of the common thoughts and ideas. As I mentioned, there's just never ending comments here. We apologize to everyone. We try to make comments where and how we can. But at the end of the day, this is the night hobby, and we'll continue to put more content out there. We're excited for a lot more of the information that's coming out. I'll just do a little quick monologue here for give anybody any closing questions or comments. But upcoming, we are working on an episode with Tevita Fale to go over his next series. Will be on the Tuitonga, covering the major events that happened in those Tuitonga that led throughout the thousands of years of the Tuitonga reign. And we're also going to build more content. We're going to carry on with our series on Tokyo Kamea and the Mariner. And then, we'll continue with our interviews as well. So, with that being said, appreciate everyone's time, appreciate everyone's willingness to contribute. And once again, as we mentioned before, we are all one. Polynesians are one. We're just trying to have a digital kava experience here with everyone. And with that being said, we appreciate it. Stay curious. And until next time, see you later.